Do you remember the day you said, "I do"? The world felt brand new, full of promises whispered under a hopeful sky. You dreamed of a shared future, a partnership built on love and respect. But sometimes, the brightest beginnings can fade into the quietest heartbreaks. It started subtly, didn't it? A suggestion here, a preference there. Care, that slowly started to feel like control. You held your tongue, telling yourself it was for the sake of peace. That silence, you mistook it for harmony. But peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of understanding. And in that quiet, your own voice began to fade. You started making yourself smaller to fit into the space he allowed. You stopped bringing up things that mattered to you because you knew it would lead to a fight, or, worse, that heavy, suffocating silence. Emotional neglect crept in, disguised as, "He's just busy," or "That's just how he is." Disrespect became a casual joke you were expected to laugh at. Manipulation was framed as looking out for you. Your world, once vibrant and full of your own colors, started to be painted over in shades of his choosing. Then came the sleepless nights, lying next to someone who felt a million miles away. The tears you'd quickly wipe away before the bathroom light flickered on. The forced smiles at family gatherings, the practiced, "We're great," when friends asked how you were. You became an actor in your own life, playing the part of the happy spouse while your heart was breaking behind the scenes. The weight of that performance is exhausting, isn't it? You started to wonder, is this it? Is this what marriage is supposed to feel like? A constant state of anxiety, of walking on eggshells, of measuring every word. You looked in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. The spark in your eyes was gone, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. You questioned your worth. Maybe you were too sensitive. Maybe you were asking for too much. Maybe this ache in your soul was just a normal part of love. And when you tentatively reached out, the world seemed to echo your doubts. Marriage is hard work, they'd say. You just need to adjust. Don't be so dramatic. Think of the family. Each piece of advice, however well-intentioned, felt like another brick in the wall that was closing in around you. It amplified the war inside your head, the voice of your own pain versus the chorus of societal expectation. You felt utterly alone, trapped between a reality that was hurting you and a world that told you to endure it. Then, one day, the fog began to lift. It might not have been a dramatic showdown. Maybe it was a quiet Tuesday night. A promise he broke without a second thought. A dismissive wave of his hand when you tried to share something important. Or maybe it was during one of those silent dinners, where the only sound was the clinking of cutlery, and you looked across the table and realized you were lonelier with him than you could ever be by yourself. In that moment of piercing clarity, a profound truth settled in your heart. Love shouldn't hurt like this. Love shouldn't require you to lose yourself. It should be a safe harbor, not a battlefield. It should feel like coming home, not like tiptoeing through a minefield. You realized you had been holding on so tightly to the memory of what you thought it could be, that you were ignoring the reality of what it had become. The choice became stark and terrifyingly clear. Stay and live half a life, a shadow of the person you were meant to be, or walk away alone, but with your dignity and your soul intact. It was the scariest decision you would ever have to make. But for the first time in a long time, it was a decision that was truly yours. Reclaiming yourself doesn't happen overnight. It starts with the smallest acts of rebellion. It's the first time you say no to something you don't want to do, and the world doesn't end. It's speaking your opinion in a conversation, even if your voice shakes. It's pulling out that old guitar, lacing up your running shoes, or picking up a paintbrush again. Rediscovering the hobbies and passions that were once a part of your identity. It's taking a deep breath and realizing you can breathe freely without waiting for someone else's approval. Each small step builds on the last. You start setting boundaries, not as walls to keep people out, but as fences to protect the sacred garden of your own well-being. The pain of letting go of the dream is immense. You'll grieve for the future you thought you'd have. But alongside that grief, a new feeling begins to emerge. Relief. The quiet, profound relief of no longer having to perform, of no longer walking on eggshells. The day you finally walk away, it might not be with anger or a dramatic exit. It might be with a quiet acceptance, an understanding that you are not leaving because you stopped loving him, but because you finally started loving yourself enough to know you deserve more. You deserve peace. You deserve to be seen, heard, and valued. There will be moments of loneliness. The silence in the house might feel deafening at first, but slowly, those moments of loneliness transform into moments of solitude, of peace. You learn to enjoy your own company. You start to heal. And people will notice. They'll see the light returning to your eyes. They'll hear the genuine laughter that bubbles up, unrestrained. They'll see you blooming, not in spite of what you went through, but because of it. You found your strength in the wreckage, and you are building a new life, brick by brick, on the foundation of self-love and resilience. If this story resonates with you, know that you are not alone. Your pain is valid, and your journey to healing is possible. It takes immense courage to choose yourself. But on the other side of that fear is freedom. It's a life where you are the author of your own story, living in full, vibrant color. Thank you for listening. If you found value in this, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more stories of empowerment and healing. You are worthy of a love that celebrates you, not diminishes you. It started like a fairy tale, didn't it? A promise whispered under a summer sky, a future painted in the brightest colors. We stepped into marriage with hearts full of hope, believing our love story would be the one that defied all odds. The wedding day felt like the beautiful beginning of an epic novel, where every chapter was supposed to be better than the last. We built a home not just with furniture, but with dreams. Dreams of growing old together, of laughter echoing in the hallways, of a partnership that felt like coming home. But sometimes, the most dangerous cracks are the ones you can't see at first. They start as tiny fissures, so subtle you almost convince yourself they're not there. A suggestion on what to wear, framed as care. A request to skip a night out with friends, disguised as a desire to spend more time together. Control, I later learned, often wears the mask of concern. And the silence. Oh, the silence. I once mistook it for peace, for the comfortable quiet that settles between two people who know each other's souls. I didn't realize it was the sound of a voice, my voice, beginning to fade. I didn't realize it was the absence of connection, not the presence of harmony. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to shrink. I began choosing my words carefully, not to be kind, but to avoid a reaction. I'd swallow my opinions to keep the peace, believing that a quiet home was a happy home. I was the keeper of harmony, the one who smoothed over every disagreement before it could truly begin. But the cost of that harmony was my own voice. Emotional neglect began to creep in. My feelings were often dismissed as being too sensitive. My needs were secondary to maintaining the status quo. Conversations became one-sided, my perspective treated as an afterthought. It was a slow, quiet erosion of the self, so gradual that I didn't notice until half of me was already gone. The nights were the hardest. That's when the facade I wore all day would crumble. Lying awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying conversations in my head, wondering what I could have said or done differently. The tears I held back in public would fall silently onto my pillow. The house would be still. But my mind was a storm of anxiety and loneliness. In the morning, I'd splash cold water on my face, practice my smile in the mirror, and walk out the door as if everything was perfectly fine. "How are you?" people would ask. "Great," I'd reply, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. This performance was exhausting. a second full-time job I never signed up for. I was living a double life, the one everyone saw, and the one that was silently breaking me behind closed doors. A haunting question started to echo in the quiet corners of my mind. Is this normal? Is this just what marriage is? You hear the phrases, "Marriage is hard work. All couples fight." So I tried to convince myself that this constant ache in my chest, this feeling of being invisible in my own life, was just part of the deal. I began to question my own worth. Maybe I was too demanding. Maybe I wasn't grateful enough. The manipulation was so subtle that I started to believe the narrative, that the problem wasn't the situation, but my reaction to it. I felt like I was losing my mind, questioning my own reality, my own sanity. This constant self-doubt was a cage, and I didn't know how I had ended up inside it. And then, there was the pressure from the outside. Well-meaning friends and family would offer advice. You just need to try harder. Marriage requires compromise. Think of the commitment you made. Every piece of advice, meant to be helpful, felt like another lock on my cage. It amplified the war raging inside me. One part of me screamed that this was wrong, that love shouldn't feel like a constant battle for validation. The other part whispered that I was failing, that I was the one who needed to adjust and be more accommodating. This conflict left me feeling utterly alone, caught between a world that told me to stay and a soul that was begging me to run. The breaking point wasn't a loud explosion. It was a quiet, shattering moment of clarity. It came during a silent dinner. The clinking of our forks, the only sound in a room thick with unspoken words. I looked across the table at the person I had promised my forever to, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. The connection that had once been our anchor was gone. In that deafening silence, I realized something profound. Love should be a safe harbor, not a battlefield. It shouldn't feel like walking on eggshells, constantly bracing for the next storm. It should be the place where you can be your most authentic self, not a performance you have to perfect. The love I was fighting for was a memory, not a reality. In that moment, a choice crystallized before me. I could continue down this path, living a half-life, a shadow of the person I was meant to be, forever chipping away at my soul to fit into a space that was suffocating me. Or I could choose the terrifying, uncertain path of walking alone. It was a choice between a familiar, painful certainty and an unknown future that held the possibility of peace. It was a choice between keeping a promise that was breaking me and making a new promise to myself. A promise of dignity, of self-respect, of a life where I could finally breathe again. The thought was terrifying, but for the first time in a long time, it also felt like hope. Reclaiming myself didn't happen overnight. It started with small, quiet acts of rebellion. It began with the word no. No, that doesn't work for me. No, I don't agree. Each no to something that diminished me was a yes to myself. It was terrifying at first, like learning to use a muscle I'd forgotten I had. I started speaking up in small ways, sharing an opinion without apology. I picked up an old hobby I had let go of, a paintbrush that felt foreign and familiar in my hands. I went for long walks alone, just listening to music and breathing, really breathing, freely and deeply. These weren't grand gestures, but they were the foundational bricks of a new life, a life where I was the architect. Letting go hurt. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It was the pain of grieving a future that would never be, of letting go of the dream I had held on to for so long. There were days filled with doubt and fear, where the loneliness felt like a physical weight. But intertwined with that pain was an undeniable sense of relief. It was the relief of no longer having to perform, of no longer walking on eggshells. It was the relief of taking off a mask I didn't even realize I had been wearing for years. The pain was the cost of leaving, but the relief was the prize of freedom. And with each passing day, the relief grew stronger, and the pain began to soften. The day I finally left, it wasn't with a dramatic slam of the door. There was no anger, no screaming match. There was just a quiet, somber acceptance. It was the end of a chapter, not out of hatred, but out of the deep, painful understanding that we were no longer right for each other. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror, not at what I was losing, but at what I was finally gaining: myself. The initial moments of loneliness were sharp, the silence in my new, empty apartment almost deafening. But slowly, those moments of loneliness began to transform. They turned into moments of peace. Solitude became a gift, not a punishment. And then, healing began to bloom in the quiet spaces. It started with a genuine laugh, one that came from my belly, unforced and real. It was in rediscovering the simple joy of my own company, of making a cup of tea just the way I like it. It was in reconnecting with friends who saw the light returning to my eyes before I did. Self-love, a concept that once felt so abstract, started to become a daily practice. I was no longer a supporting character in someone else's story. I was the protagonist of my own. The journey was hard, and the scars remain as a reminder of the battle I fought. But they are also a testament to my strength, my resilience, and the beautiful, powerful act of choosing myself. If you are walking a similar path, please know you are not alone. It's okay to feel lost, and it's brave to ask for help. Reaching out to a friend, a family member, or a professional counselor can be the first step toward finding your light again. Your story matters, your voice deserves to be heard, and your happiness is worth fighting for. Thank you so much for listening. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content about healing and self-discovery. Take care of yourself.